All right, so the other thing that's kind of handy is just to morph from one drawing to another drawing. And this can create some really cool effects. It's particularly useful for um, the next assignment where you're going to be taking a logo and kind of animating it. In this case, the example I have for you is, once again, we're just going to be doing the same thing. We're going to take this guy and then more or less morph it into this. And once again, these are not really conducive to it because they're different styles and it's a different color and everything else. But regardless, I'm just going to give it a go. And if I can make it work here, you can try to make it work with anything. Okay, so I'm turning those off. And here's what the example is. And I think what I'm going to do is not actually do it in front of you. I'm just going to explain what I did, because this one's a little bit harder, where with the one, you just basically moved the drawings, right? And we just manually animated frame by frame. This one, what you have to do, I'll just show you what it looks like first. Let's get a little closer here. So this one, the way I would approach it is this. So you're going to have your starting point and you're going to have your ending point, okay? And you can see I put them in the same thing. You want to do the same, a similar thing where in the previous exercise, the switch, right, we hide the transition through the motion. You want to incorporate a motion with this as well, if you can help it. So like a spin, a twirl, a movement, a shifting of parts and stuff. Like either way, you want to kind of do the transition through that motion, preferably animated, with timing and spacing incorporated. In my case, what I did is I started with this drawing, end with that drawing, and I actually just used the same drawing to start the transition. So you see, it's just this one kind of anticipation frame to try and help it blend. So you can already get the idea that it's going to start spinning. And then I did a drawing here, okay? Now, I put on the onion skinning. I found that the onion skinning was hard to do when you see all of the, for one, I have it over a lot of them. So let's just do, let's say 2, so you can transition there. But it's hard to see sometimes between. So I would actually put this on, and it was actually easier for me to see my drawings by having it in the, what do they call it? Wireframe mode? I don't know what they call it. Outline or something. So I could see it a little bit better. And so I would suggest doing that. But so basically what I did is I did a drawing here, and then I just tried to swirl it. And then I just basically made it until I got to here. Okay. Now, when I did it, I just tried to think, okay, I'm going to have it spin into it, because that would be easy to make it into a circle, since it was going to be a circle. And so my first drawings, I just kind of made it into this yin-yang thing, right? So just looking at the main mass of it. And then I had it get much closer to being the full thing. And then what I did is I drew pretty much the other one, but I put in much closer. And then I took the end drawing, and instead I went backwards. I started trying to manipulate it to look more similar to this one. And then, again, I just kind of adjusted the last one until I get here. So it might make sense to sort of, on the one end, draw from this way going forward, and then draw from that way going backwards, and try to meet them in the middle if you can help it, okay? The other thing is, too, it's not a bad idea to decide on certain elements and track those. So, for instance, his headband was very similar to those horizon lines on the final thing here, right? So I was like, okay, I'll just make that. So when I have him go around, if you follow it, you'll see that's basically what it becomes. And I kind of had it settle, too. So I had it swirl around. It goes up, and then it drops, and then settles. So if you watch, you can see. It could be better, but that's the idea behind it. So, and I did the same thing with the hands. I've decided the hands were sort of similar to these things, right? It's like the two hands touching. So I just decided that I would turn those into it. Now, the other thing I had to do with mine, that hopefully if you do it better, you don't have to, is I had to change the color, which is sort of frustrating. So basically every frame, I would just go in here and I would just click on the fill, click on this, and then I would just start shifting it more and more towards green. And I just did the same thing going backwards. So I went to here. I'm like, okay, let's start trying to shift this to orange. And I just shifted them back together. So the other thing I also did was I took the outline here, because this one has an outline and the other one does not. And so every frame, I went 75, then 50%. This is the alpha. And then I went to 25. And then on this one, it had none. So that way, basically, the stroke becomes invisible by the time it gets to this point. And so it kind of transitions out of it. Whether that's a better way of doing it or not, I don't know. But The idea here is just to try and get something to, to swirl around here. Let's click off, and you can kind of see what we end up with. It's not the greatest, but I think I was just trying to do something that was kind of difficult. It might even make more sense that instead of doing this, you decide on something that you're almost transitioning to in between. So have him transition into an orange circle or something, or a wheel, and then transition to that, right? From a wheel to that symbol wouldn't be so hard. And to go from the cone to a wheel might be a little bit easier as well. So it's one of those things. But yeah, but that would more or less be a morph. And that could be pretty fun, particularly if you're trying to do like motion graphics and that sort of work.